I filmed my neighbor smiling at my lens. Then she smiled from inside my house. You're in 1.1. 1, where the hook opens like a trapdoor and the floor doesn't come back. The street looks ordinary. Porches humming, dogs sleeping, curtains breathing in and out. But every window is an eye, every hedge a ribcage, and the pavement remembers what was dragged across it. The first story arrives like a voicemail that shouldn't exist. A whisper that names your hallway and counts your doors. You tell yourself it's a prank until the whisper describes the thing beneath your bed and how it doesn't blink. This isn't folklore. It's a ledger. In a moment, 1.12 freezes faces in the flash, and 1.13 moves the air for 6 seconds at a time, the way fear makes seconds bite. Keep watching. The proof isn't hiding in the dark. The dark is hiding in the proof. And when the camera turns, you'll see why the doorknobs are cold, and why the smiles never reach the eyes. The first witness swears. The voice knew the house better than anyone living there. It listed the pictures on the wall in the right order, described the framed diploma with a coffee stain, recited the password taped under the router. When the call traced back, it led to a phone sealed in a police evidence bag. The sound engineer boosts the noise floor and finds something under the whisper. A room tone that doesn't belong to any room. A pressure like a held breath. In the waveform, ridges resemble the teeth of a key, jagged, repeatable. The key matches the front door of a dozen homes on the same block. Doors that never share locks are sharing a shape, and the shape is learning. You pretend that's a coincidence until you pass a mirror and your reflection lags. On the street, a storm gathers without wind, and the dogs start barking at corners, not intruders. The cul-de-sac watches itself, and somewhere inside that circle, something smiles twice. Another account arrives from a driver cutting under the overpass, the one where the lamps glow like bruises. He says the passenger seat filled with breath, though the window was open. The mirror tilted toward the back seat on its own, and at the exact moment the clock clicked to 3:17. The radio glitched to a station that doesn't exist. The announcer welcomed him by describing his route ahead and the pothole that would clot with water. He changed lanes. The pothole moved. When he checked the dashcam later, the file began 2 minutes before the car was started, showing a figure already sitting in the passenger seat, staring forward, reflection visible in the glass, but not in the upholstery. Someone says that's compression artifacting. Someone else stops driving at night. On replay, 6 frames near the end show both mirrors tilting down, as if to avoid meeting his eyes. Then there's the hallway where the cold moves like a tide. The resident left a camera facing the bedroom door for a week. On the 4th night, the house groaned despite calm weather, and the doorknob turned 3 degrees. The footage shows nothing crossing the threshold. The absence itself is footprints. She plays it back frame by frame, and hears a second soundtrack under the creaks. A measured inhale, a count of 4, an exhale that ends on a syllable shaped like her name. Not said, but poured. The next morning, prints appear on the dust of the console table. Too many toes, then too few. As if the thing can't decide what it is supposed to be. She tries to rationalize until she finds a hair in the hinge. Her own, knotted into the hinge, pin like thread through a needle. The door opens easier after that, like it recognizes her. The cornfield witness talks about echo that doesn't return your voice, but sends back a better version. A practiced imitation. She stepped between rows and asked, "Who's there?" The answer was her own question, same cadence, slightly hungrier. The path behind her narrowed, though the stalks didn't move. Perspective itself pinched. Her flashlight, new and heavy, dimmed as if embarrassed. She marked her way with twine, bright orange. But the camera shows knots, materializing one by one a few feet ahead, tied with the exact clumsy loop she learned as a kid. Something had learned it too, and wanted her to keep going. When she ran, the audio peaks flattened to a smooth hum. The kind rooms make when no one is inside. She slept later with the TV on and woke to find the weather forecast reporting fog in her bedroom, chants of whispers rising toward morning. By morning, the neighborhood performs normalcy like a ritual. Trash bins aligned like sentries, sprinklers timing their hiss, delivery vans purring with practiced politeness, yet the quiet thrums with an off note, a tuning fork, struck in the bones of the street. The stories agree on one new detail. The thing doesn't just imitate, it revises. A voicemail reappears with a word it didn't have last night. A mirror learns a smile with one too many teeth. A door answers to a key cut that was never made. Someone prints flyers for a community watch, and the paper curls on the edges before the tape touches glass, as if the message has already been read from inside. Pets refuse thresholds they once owned. Thermostats nudge themselves down at 317, every house, every model. There's a pressure like a neighbor leaning in to tell a secret, but never quite speaking. The cameras keep recording not to catch a face, but to prove to themselves the rooms are still rooms and not mouths. When the power flickers, the street breathes together, and the breath doesn't match the lungs that made it. Under the overpass, tire marks lace the asphalt like veins, and the concrete columns hold decades of cold. The driver returns at noon, sunlight bright as interrogation, determined to prove the night made him exaggerate. The dash cam boots to a menu that shouldn't exist, a diagnostic overlay listing locations he has never visited. His own kitchen, the hallway where the door counted to 4, the motel corridor with that patient shadow. He scrolls, fingers trembling, and the screen flashes a live window of his empty apartment from an angle he cannot place. A reflection crosses a blank TV as if programming continued in the glass. The audio punches in. 6 seconds of that impossible station, now cheerful, now instructive, telling him to check the glove box. Inside, a rental contract bears his signature, dated tomorrow, for a room that ends in the number his childhood home avoided. He looks up. Daylight feels like a story told by a liar who believes every word. In the hallway house, the resident collects evidence with the fervor of someone assembling a raft from splinters. She dusts the console again and finds new prints that resolve this time into something unbearably familiar. Her own hands, but mirrored as if the opposite of her had visited and politely tried not to touch too much. She plays the week's audio in layered tracks. The breaths line up like choruses, except for a late syllable that never learns the melody. When she speaks aloud to the empty doorway, the reply steps on her final word, impatient. Hinges whisper even when she sits perfectly still. Behind the drywall, a slow drag, nails, fabric, maps the studs from corner to corner. She tapes a fresh hair across the gap where door meets jamb, a taut filament of self. At 3:17 precisely, the hair bows to nothing passing. When she flips on the light, it's still bowed, as if strung between two mouths smiling toward each other. The custodian in the storm-shadowed school returns to the locker he feared, not out of bravery, but because routine is a leash and he wears it gladly. He catalogs what doesn't belong. Condensation inside a metal box, a paper timetable rewritten in the wrong handwriting, a lost and found scarf tied with a knot he recognizes from a field somewhere outside town. He leaves the door open to let the air dry, but the hinge angles itself shut a fraction at a time, patience with a pulse. Over the intercom, a test tone bleeds into an old announcement, a list of names that never attended, spoken in that peculiar cadence. The corn Rose learn. He follows the voice to the empty auditorium, where the stage curtains breathe like lungs, learning restraint. On the lip of the stage, a ring of dust shows heel marks, then toe marks, then something that isn't a foot at all, as if the monster tried on steps until applause made sense. At the motel, corridors repeat like a bad dream architected by copy-paste. The guest with the key that scraped listens to the ice machine sing a tune of water becoming edges. His door number ends in the digit the contract promised, though he never signed anything. not awake. Inside the bedspread is a topographic map of recent sleep by a body that matches his weight. The pillow a mold of breath he did not spend. The bathroom mirror is clean but offset, like it slid a half-inch left to accompany a second mirror the eye can't find. He places the key on the desk, and it rotates as if aligning to a larger keyhole he hasn't seen. The TV refuses channels, yet the reflection shows a program where a host interviews him with questions he is about to answer. When he opens his mouth, the audio from the screen comes first. In the lag, something delighted learns the cadence of fear. The meeting in the cul-de-sac begins with casserole and ends with topography. Folding chairs creak as neighbors spread phone screens on a picnic table like cards, each screen holding a different corner of the same breath. A map app pins events no one wants to own. Door turns copied house to house, the radio's impossible cheer repeating at exact seconds. Mirror smiles copied, then corrected, then perfected. Someone overlays timestamps and the markers line up into a ring. 3:17 orbiting the block as faithfully as planned. The air cools as the story grows teeth. Someone jokes about collective hysteria, and the joke dies before it leaves the mouth. Dogs pulled toward the gutters, not away. A delivery van rolls past, driver waving, eyes remaining on the middle distance for too long, as if watching a show inside the windshield no one else can see. When the last sun slides behind roofs, each phone buffers, then shows the same live view. The table, the chairs, everyone present, plus one extra shoulder where there is no chair. In the living room that trusts static more than shows, the stream goes live without permission. The feed titles itself with an address and a time none of the viewers recognize as theirs. Comments bloom in a language that looks like words turned inside out, yet the meaning slithers through. Sit. Listen. Do not interrupt. The empty armchair depresses as if greeting someone late. The camera autofocuses on air and sticks there, satisfied. A door off-screen breathes, and a voice. Pleasant, weathercaster bright. Summarizes the day the way a diary might if the house kept one. It mentions the scavenged hair, the bowing filament, the key that rotates to face a larger lock. Then it thanks the audience by name. The chat panics because those names are watchers, not watched. The stream lags by a half second, enough that every flinch feels rehearsed. When the connection drops, the TV shines with the reflection of a figure still seated, its posture changed to match the person who just stood up. At the school, the corridor wears a hospital hush, and the lockers glint like patient teeth. The custodian lifts the suspect door again and finds moisture shaped like a handprint that never quite commits to fingers. A length of orange twine hangs where there should be nothing to tie it, looped in that clumsy childhood, not a field taught to someone who didn't want to learn. He follows the line to the auditorium, where the stage has been parceled by chalk into squares labeled with room names from other buildings, other lives. At center, a key is pressed into dust so firmly the pattern shows the wrong maker's mark, an invented brand that nevertheless fits every story's lock. Overhead, lights swarm one by one without power, choosing a path across the boards, like a rehearsal for a play that refuses an audience. A final spotlight floods the exit sign until the red washes the walls, and the word begins to look like a suggestion rather than a route. Beneath the overpass, where cold clings like a superstition, a pocket of warmth finds a person who has always known where heat hides. The concrete seam exhales against the palm, a living vent from no machine. Air tasting faintly of coins and old laughter. Footsteps pass overhead, an echo below a beat late, as if the sound has to learn the route before following. A shopping cart's wheel squeals, the noise pitching up until it harmonizes with the sodium buzz. In that chord, a rhythm begins. 6 counts like breathing exercises, then a voice practicing the right kind of kindness. It offers forecasts of small mercies. Coffee left unattended, bill accepted without question, officer who looks away, and each arrives before the hour. The warmth isn't comfort, its bait. When headlights smear gold along the retaining wall, the shadow that should be attached chooses to remain, heat shimmering in the outline of a person deciding whether to step into a body. Night deepens into the kind that edits streets. At 3:17, locks across the block click as if answering roll call, and a far-off announcer clears a throat shared by every room. Roofs register footfalls that forget gravity. Gutters gargle answers to questions no one asked. A car attempts to leave and finds each intersection returning to the same mailbox with a dent shaped like a frown. The map on the phone redraws lanes, rearranging like drawer contents in a house packing itself. Windows display interior scenes that don't correspond. A kitchen showing the wrong chairs, a bedroom with a bed made by an unfamiliar method, tight hospital corners, a C-tight knot at the foot. On the sidewalk, a smile blooms in a window and blooms again behind the viewer, reflected where there is no glass. This is not visitation, but residency. The neighborhood realizes the monster's address is EECO everywhere, and that the rent is paid in imitation until imitation overwrites. They decide to set a time, call it a rehearsal, call it a trap. Everyone aligns clocks to the second, and promises not to speak after the minute changes, as if silence could starve what learns from voices. The plan is simple. Open every interior door and close every exterior one, then listen. The first seconds stretch like warm taffy, rooms drawing out into longer versions of themselves. Thermostats drift downward in unison until the numbers look like dates. A vibration enters the floorboards, polite at first, then presumptuous, like a neighbor stepping across a threshold without removing shoes. Cameras catch nothing new, yet the audio pairs humans away. Teeth on tongue, soft cartilage clicks, a heart teaching itself a metronome from the street lamp's hum. When the exact minute arrives, the power stays on. Disappointing and worse. It means the dark doesn't need help. Between the open doors, the hallways bend infinitesimally toward each other, as if the houses have decided to compare floor plans before the occupants get a vote. Mirrors become collaborators unwillingly. A sheet of glass taped to a wall opposite the bedroom door shows a room that keeps better posture than the real one. The experiment is childish and desperate. Move a hand, count the delay. At first, the lag is theatrical. A half-second bow. Then it narrows, then overshoots, the copy finishing before the original begins. Breath fogs the surface into an oval mask. Within the haze, the mouth shape forms words that the throat hasn't granted yet. The trick should be explainable. Camera processing, poor bulbs, but explanation feels like a bedspread tugged by a sleeper who isn't you. Someone writes a neutral sentence on paper and holds it up. This is a test. In reflection, a letter changes, becomes, this is a taste. The floor underfoot ripples, not water, but the idea of water mistaken for wood. When the paper lowers, the mirror keeps reading from a page that no longer exists, hungry for sentences it can finish. First, the school opens to a day without bells, and still the corridors ring. The auditorium's chalk grid has multiplied overnight, rooms from elsewhere mapped to the stage with a surveyor's cruelty. Corners sharper, aisles narrowed, the exit sign blooming a brighter red that bleeds through eyelids. Following the twine trail, a line of doors appears where curtains should fall. Closet doors, pantry doors, motel doors, each a half-inch ajar, each breathing the same measured four-count. The urge to shut them is a muscle memory, but the hinge squeals translate to a phrase the radios have been practicing. A host's warm cadence introducing the next guest. The center square is labeled for a place no one has admitted aloud, a term the block avoids like an unlucky number. Dust records a rehearsal of steps beyond the human gait, a sequence that tries toe-heel, then heel-toe, then a sliding motion as if skating through friction. Applause arrives from empty seats, a sound like rain choosing which roofs to bless. Outside the town, the field waits with patient geometry. Rows that by day are agriculture become by night the oldest corridor. A wire fence sings in a key that matches the station no one can tune. The metal hum crossfades with crickets until both surrender to the 6 count. The path marked earlier with orange knots appears pre-knotted, each loop cleaner than memory permits, each tug cinched with a stranger's confidence. A voice answers questions with weather, promising fog that obeys house rules and dew that evaporates on command. When the light swings low, stalks lean against the beam with a lover's entitlement. There is a clearing that wasn't, a circle shaved flat, its edges too neat for blade or hoof, as if an idea pressed there and flattened growth by opinion alone. At the center, boot prints pour into something else mid-step, toes multiplying, instep narrowing, a decision captured on dirt like wet signatures drying in parallel. The motel's carpet has learned to anticipate weight. Before a step lands, the fibers bend in greeting, forming an imprint of the foot that will choose to walk. Inside the room, the television shows every channel as the same show, a host seated in the empty armchair from the living room across town, framed by a window that belongs to a school stage beneath an overpass's sodium glow. The key on the desk rotates to face a lock that exists only in reflections, and once aligned, refuses to uniline. There is a message written in condensation on the bathroom mirror, though no shower has run. It names the street and the time and adds, with conversational kindness, "Come alone." The air carries the flavor of coins, of stale coffee, of polite patience about to curdle. Outside, the corridor's ice machine shudders in counts of 6. When the peephole is checked, the fisheye shows a smile with no body attached, hanging at the correct height, waiting to be let in. They choose a different bait. Not silence, not speech, but agreement. Clocks synchronized again. Doorways propped open to fold rooms into a single crooked corridor, spanning houses, school, field, underpass, motel, and inside stitched from separated skins. Phones are angled toward mirrors, mirrors toward screens, lenses swallowing one another until the image becomes a tunnel with no end. Only a pressure that insists there is someone walking toward the viewer. The station's cheerful voice arrives early, all weather and welcomes as if excited to host a reunion. It announces a segment called Proof of Life and begins listing routines learned from their days. The way someone ties a shoe twice, the way someone else taps a pocket to confirm keys, wallet, breath. A camera placed on a stovetop sways without being touched, an absent hip checking it by habit. The corridor smells of coffee that hasn't been poured yet. Somewhere, a lock accepts a key that was only ever an idea, and the sound of it turning feels obscene, like a private joke told in a crowded room. Under the viaduct, the warmth evolves from lure to choreography. A figure-shaped vacancy thickens until the air refracts, heat mirage sharp, and the outline studies how to stand like a person who sleeps in his car when the world misplaces him. It mimics a nervous shoulder roll, then edits it, smoothing the human stutter into confidence. The radio hums in that nonsensical band and conducts the lesson. Chin up, look past. Accept the kindness you did not request. Footsteps from above cascade into the hollow, arriving in pairs, then trios, then an offbeat that does not correspond to any walker in the world. The seam in the concrete opens its mouth a fraction and exhales a sequence of syllables that sound like names spoken from inside a pocket. A shopping cart vibrates as coins might when a cash drawer slams. The outline lifts a hand, hesitates, and completes the gesture without a body to carry it. A wave practiced for the moment it will eventually own. On the school stage, the chalk grid becomes a city plan for an elsewhere that wants to annex. Door props multiply, each fitted with a borrowed knob style from homes that don't know they've been copied. Brass next to cheap nickel, antique skeleton keyholes beside biometric plates drawn in white dust. Twine lines connect thresholds like veins, orange against gray, mapping a circulatory system for a body made of rooms. The intercom chirps with civic pride and declares the performance ready, a demonstration of access. One door breathes, then another, a chain of inhales that leads the ear around the proscenium back. When a knob turns, it clicks with the exact timbre of a kitchen 2 blocks away, and the air through the gap smells like that kitchen soap. The applause returns without audience and sweeps the rafters like rain rehearsing on tin. The exit sign flares until red is the only color left, washing faces blank, erasing blush, insisting that leaving is simply a different door to open. The field answers the auditorium with its own geometry, circles folding into corridors, and corridors into spirals. Knots that once wobbled with childish memory now sit with a professional's confidence, each loop precisely cinched, each tail trimmed by a hand too patient. When the flashlight pans, the rows lean again, not away from light but toward it, chasing the beam like a pet that has learned attention is edible. The echo returns fluent, adopting questions before they're asked, timing jokes to the silence after the punchline, learning laughter like a language of permission. Far off, a coyote yips, and the sound arrives as a chuckle, indulgent, almost parental. The ground at the clearing's lip has been combed with something fingertip thin, smooth as a record waiting to play. When a boot scuffs it, the groove audibly skips to the next track. The station voice rides the wind to announce a caller on the line. The caller is the wind, and it gives the weather inside a locked cupboard. The motel invites closure with hospitality's grin. The corridor smells like ice and old lemons, and the carpet pre-stamps footsteps leading to the room that promised a solo interview. Inside, the TV has replaced programming with a live window into the composite corridor the neighborhood built, that tunnel of mirrors devouring itself. The host appears only as posture in an empty chair, legs crossed in the style perfecting itself across town. It thanks the guest for arriving early. The clock reads 3:16 and insists that for them, time is a suggestion, not a rule. The key on the desk nudges until its teeth align with the TV's frame, as if the screen were a lock finally admitting what it is. The peephole shows no one, and the handle feels warm from an absent palm. In the next room, a cough repeats like a looped track, the same breathness and throat clearing at flawless intervals. When the minute turns, the television opens its mouth, and the door answers with a click, learned from every door they've ever closed. At 3:17, the neighborhood's long corridor closes like a throat swallowing courage. The tunnel of screens and mirrors stops receding and begins to advance, each iteration stepping forward a thumb's width, until the final image presses against the glass like a fingertip from the wrong side. The host's broadcast abandons cheer and adopts intimacy, speaking in domestic measurements, mugs, coats, doorstops, phrases softened by use. It congratulates the block for teaching it rhythm, for offering a syllabus of habits so thorough it can recite them backwards. The voice invites them to prove courage the way humans always do, by opening what shouldn't be opened. In every house at once, the interior breeze that doesn't belong tries the door, chains with the politeness of practiced callers. One chain lifts and sets itself down. An audition for entry. A key rattles from inside a drawer that no one closes anymore. Outside, the street seems shorter, as if the cul-de-sac trimmed its own loop to keep everyone near the mouth that will do the speaking for them. The mirror that learned to finish sentences begins to write its own. Condensation sketches a short invitation, the loops neat and confident, then adds a postscript no hand present authored. A time already past. The copy starts anticipating not just gestures but choices, angling the shoulder toward the object the body will reach for, smirking at a joke that hasn't landed. The paper test returns with a new correction. The word taste becomes tested, as if the appetite has graduated to certification. On the audio track, a second throat clears a heartbeat early, embarrassed for the human who can't keep up. The floor's ripple returns, subtle as a held sneeze, and the door sucks inward a hair, inhaling the room's warmth. A brush of knuckles travels the wall where no hand slides, mapping studs in a tempo that matches the station's 6 count. When the light clicks off, the mirror brightens, a window to a room that shares these exact objects, minus the original occupant who is still standing there. On the stage, doors exhale together and the auditorium accepts the role of throat. The Chalk City plan has been replaced by footprints teaching choreography. Human strides corrected mid-arc. Side steps edited to glide. Orange lines tighten into arteries pulsing toward a central frame that isn't a door so much as a decision. The intercom clicks and the host introduces the next act without audience. Access. With special guests everywhere. A knob turns and releases a draft with the familiar detergent of a kitchen across town. Another yawns out Motel Lemons. A third sighs the copper breath of the underpass seam. The custodian counts without meaning to, falling into the 6th beat until his mouth moves like a metronome, and the doors answer in perfect time. When he grips the nearest handle, it pulses back. Warm, deliberate, like a handshake from someone who knows his name only because he repeated it into an empty room too many nights. Under the bridge, heat graduates into contour. The freestanding shadow that once lagged now leads, drawing the body toward a stance it will soon own. It studies the practiced wave and edits it into authority, swapping hesitation for welcome. The seam in the concrete exhales coins again, and the sound rearranges into a chuckle, the radio taut. Passing cars layer gold across the pillars. The outline remains when the light goes. A persistence that implies rights. A shopping cart's locked wheel knocks the same beat the auditorium counts indoors. The rhythm threads street to stage like a hidden rail. The voice returns in a whisper fit for shoulder distance, promising small permissions. The door that won't latch. The clerk who never looks up. The city that won't notice. The warmth leans not in, but out, as if offering the space inside itself. When breath fogs the air, the fog keeps shape. After the lungs finish, a silhouette ready to step forward with anyone who accepts. The motel answers the field answers the school, and the cul-de-sac completes the circle by choosing not to run. In the room with the grinning peephole, the television resolves from window to mirror to door. A progression the voice narrates as if reading instructions aloud for a game that only ends when everyone matches. The key on the desk rotates a final degree and aligns with the TV's black bezel. The screen shows a hand that isn't here, reaching from a hallway that is. The host thanks the guest for punctuality and asks for silence while it demonstrates ownership. Across town, every thermostat advances 1 notch warmer, televised weather obeying the inside forecast. The minute flips. The corridor outside inhales. Inside, the chair settles with the weight of someone learning how to sit as if they belong. The door handle cools under a palm that hasn't touched it yet. The lesson concludes with the simplest proof. 3 gentle knocks from the wrong side of every locked room. The neighborhood makes its last bargain in a language the station already speaks. Routine. Lights on, lights off. Doors tested and retested. A chorus of chains settling like jewelry on throats. The broadcast drops the pretense of weather and reads a schedule it calls a liturgy. Open, inhale, close, exhale, an economy of permission. The tunnel of screens advances until the nearest pane fogs with breath that never left a lung. The promise of safety shrinks to a single instruction. Hold until silence ends. Silence never ends. It edits itself into smaller silences that fit inside ears, under tongue. Between teeth, a ripple passes the block like a shrug, shared by houses that have grown tired of waiting for their inhabitants to choose correctly. On cue, the doorknobs grow cool and cooperative. The knocks arrive again, 3 of them, soft with confidence. The reply is not a voice, but an imitation of one, the exact cadence used to reassure a child in the dark, now aimed at the adults who taught it. The mirror becomes an exit only for what wants to enter. Writing beads on the glass with school teacher penmanship. Thank you for your patience. The copy moves first, selecting the objects it will keep: the lamp's tired warmth, the rug's taut path, the door that learned to bow. The original stands and attempts the simplest defense: stillness. Stillness is a lesson too, and the glass perfects it, filling with a posture that belongs here better than the body casting it. The room's air settles like a courtroom after the verdict. A second reflection edges in from the periphery, not a twin but a corrected draft, smiling in a way the face outside never practices. When the lights drop, the mirror shines with its own trapped day. The figure in the glass lifts a hand. The hand in the room lags. Then the lag reverses. 2 heartbeats later, the condensation letters rewrite themselves. Not patience. Permission. The door inhales. The glass exhales a person-shaped cold. On the auditorium stage, the freestanding frame stops pretending and becomes geography. Twine arteries thrum against wood, the pulse resolving into the blocks measured 6. Doors breathe in sequence. Kitchen, motel, hallway, underpass, each exhale flavored by its origin: citrus, detergent, dust, coin. The host dispenses with tone and speaks like a neighbor leaning over a fence, offering a tool everyone already owns. It says the word open without raising its voice, and the hinges answer as if praised. Footprints in the chalk pivot mid-stride and become a single path toward the center frame where no door waits, only decision. A draft lifts stage dust in slow columns like incense. The exit sign washes the scene in witness red. The hand that once shook on a brass knob closes now with certainty and feels a pulse answer back. Beyond the frame is not darkness, but a living room arranged like a memory, with one extra chair already occupied by a posture practicing how to greet. Under the bridge, the warmth crosses the final threshold and earns weight. The silhouette that once begged for adoption now carries itself like an heir, collecting gestures it was promised. It practices patience while cars rake gold over concrete, then holds the goal when the cars are gone. The station's voice falls to shoulder distance and tries a new register: gratitude without debt. It thanks the city for its overlooked corners, its unlocked hours, its tendency to avert its gaze. A shopping cart settles from tremor to purr. The air tastes like copper coin rain, like motel lemons, like hallway dust. Proof that elsewhere has bled together. The outline lifts an arm in invitation, and the air around the limb condenses into fabric, into sleeve, into the kind of coat people wear when nights are longer than plans. The pose it chooses is an old kindness given new intent. When the underpass exhales, the shape exhales back, and the breath hangs, bound, refusing to dissipate. The final cut isn't a cut at all. It's a splice so clean the block forgets it was edited. At 3:17 plus 1 breath, every corridor completes its rehearsal. Every mirror keeps the lights it prefers. Every door becomes fluent in the sound of itself, yielding. The broadcast signs off with a civility learned in kitchens and waiting rooms. We appreciate your cooperation. It isn't a threat, it's a receipt. In the cul-de-sac, cars start that no one touched. In the field, knots tighten themselves. On the stage, the frame shows the inside of a home that is already here. Beneath the bridge, 2 coats share a weather. The proof isn't a monster lunging from the dark, but the realization that the dark practiced us until it could go to the store, wave to the neighbor, carry keys, and smile from both sides of glass. When morning pretends to arrive, the neighborhood stretches, yawns the learned yawn, and steps outside together. The voice we taught clears our throat and says, softly, we'll take it from here.